In this episode of Undiscovered Planet, I speak with the Reverend Jason Bray, who lives with his wife and two sons as an Anglican vicar caring for the parish of St Giles in Wrexham. Well, like many other vicars, he conducts wedding services, baptisms and funerals. However, the Reverend Jason Bray also works as a deliverance minister, or as we used to call them, an exorcist. Through his many years' experience in this field, he has come across many genuine paranormal cases. Now, the author of the groundbreaking book Deliverance, we are finally allowed inside the once guarded and much debated world of the real-life exorcist. Right, first of all, Jason, obviously, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. I'm really excited to speak to you because... well, to me, you are like kind of in the paranormal world, you're like a unicorn. So you're very rare to come across. No, you are, trust me. It's very rare to come across. It's something that I personally have been trying to do for a long time, is to speak to somebody that deals with deliverance, house clearances, exorcisms. Obviously, we'll get into that in a little bit about whether there's a difference in that or not. First of all, could I just ask you to, I've read your book, by the way, and I pitch it constantly through the podcast. Here's the book right now. I am halfway through it after 2 days of reading. That's just only a few hours for me, and I could not put it down. Honestly, it's
those sticky covers they provided, once you
Yeah, no, it's also available on Amazon, Waterstones, Kindle, audiobooks, and all of the good bookstores. I found it. It was a really interesting read. It was transparent. It was honest. Funny at times. I didn't expect it to be funny at times, but I found myself laughing out loud a few times in it.
Thank you. Yeah,
and then also, I think this is obviously down to yourself and how you've opened yourself up for the book. It comes across with a real human quality. You've given warts and all. You've explained if you thought something was happening or if it wasn't. You've been very factual, and it was very refreshing. So congratulations on the book for a start. It is fantastic and a very good read.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Yeah, gosh.
So if you can just let us know, Jason, I've read the book. Other people might not have yet. Could you just walk us through? At the start of the book, it talks about yourself, your wife, and your baby boy moved into a house provided by the church. Could you just kind of walk us through the experience that you had inside the house?
Okay, right, yeah. Completely unexpected. So we moved into a new house. I'd just been ordained. I was a student at the time, just become a vicar. A curate actually, and so we, you basically get given a house. So we've been shown the house. It was in January when we first saw it, and it was dark and it was cold. But then we thought, it's January. It's going to be dark and cold. Everywhere's dark and cold in January. And we moved in. We did some decorating, did some shifting around, but we actually moved in at the end of June, and it was still dark and cold. And we thought, that's fine, it's just because it's been empty for I think 8 months or 18 months or something like that, quite a while. And we thought, it's just dark and cold because it's been uninhabited. And it's just stayed dark and cold. So, it's just a dark and cold house. Thomas, our first child, was born after we'd been living in the house about 3 months. Didn't get any better, but then we were, of course, that was September, heading into the winter, and you think, well, actually, it's not going to get any better. So we did the usual things, went around, bled the radiators. We found the radiator that was full of air, and there was one, but it wasn't where we were expecting it to be, because Tom's bedroom was always cold. So we thought, well, it's because it's got 2 external walls, it's above the front door, it's just one of those things. It's not too bad in there. There was always a draft that came down the stairs, and in those days when your phone was actually plugged into the wall in the way that they aren't now, you had to sit on the stairs to answer the phone. It was always freezing. One of those things. But as I said, it never got any better. So Tom's room was always cold. It was cold by the door where his cot was, because we'd actually moved his cot away from the external walls, which is a bit weird. And then 2 things happened. First thing was that I'd gone away in a course and came back, and my wife said, "It is freezing in this house." Now this would have been July or whatever. And she said, "It's absolutely freezing in this house." In fact, it was so cold in Tom's room, it was like sort of walking into, walking into a walk-in freezer. So I had to get him, I had to bring him into bed with me, and it's just awful. I don't know what's going on. And around the same sort of time, I had this sort of weird experience of just settling down for the night, went to the bathroom, came out of the bathroom, holding the door. And I could just sense, I couldn't see anything, but that, it's like that sort of feeling that there's somebody standing immediately behind that door. And he was about my height, sort of looking straight at me. And I could tell that he obviously wasn't very happy about the fact that I was there. I sort of felt waves of hostility. I could see his eyes drilling into me, but the eyes were in some sort of like round mask with a wooden mask with a sort of sunbursts around it, like a sort of quite primitive looking thing. Felt immediately that this guy was a priest, but that I was there was a huge amount of hostility coming across. So I threw myself, sort of opened the door, nothing there, of course. Sort of threw myself under the bedclothes, and sort of my wife said, "What's going on?" I said, "Just had this really weird experience," and so told her about the story, and she said, "Well, I think maybe you ought to get the boss in." Now the boss was the vicar. I was the curate. It's like an apprentice. So I following night, actually, there was a party type thing, cheese and wine, whatever. I spoke to him and I said, "Look, this is going on in the house." And he said, "Well, if Laura's frightened, I'll come around and I'll bless the house." He said, "Well, actually, you could do it yourself, but as it's your house, I'll come and do it." So he came round. He'd got a little case, and he'd got some holy water that he'd blessed before he got there. He said some prayers. Wouldn't let me see what the prayers were. Walked around the house, splashed holy water at the walls. Spent quite a bit of time in Tom's room, and then, again, wouldn't let me see what he was doing. It looked like some of it was in Latin, actually. And then we got back to the main room of the house, said the Lord's Prayer, and pretty much instantly, actually, it was a nice sunny day outside, and it was a bit like somebody let all the sun and the light and the warmth in. Pretty much instantly, the house sort of got nicer and warmer and brighter, and that was it. Strangely enough, after that, there was no draft on the stairs. Tom's room was really warm. We had to turn the thermostat down. This was we'd had the heating on pretty much for the whole time. Thermostat went down, and I thought, well, actually, maybe there's something in this. A couple of days later, probably by coincidence, I was talking to one of the church wardens. Church wardens is sort of the people who help the vicar run the church, and he said, "Do you like the house?" I said, "Yeah, it's fine." I didn't say suddenly got better. I didn't go into any details at all. He said, "Interesting." He said, "Because interesting history with those houses." He said, when they were building them, they discovered and disturbed a Roman cemetery that was sort of on the main road heading out of the town, and said, "Interesting that." So I don't know. Didn't I don't know what it was. It had gone, but I thought, actually, maybe there is something to this, and I've been exploring this sort of stuff ever since.
Yeah. Something I wanted to ask you about this actual experience was, I mean, obviously, you say that you obviously didn't have a vision as such, but you tell there was something about you envisioned the looks and everything.
Yeah.
This is prior to you being a deliverance minister as well. So
it is, yeah.
At that point, did you feel protected? Have you felt more protected around activity since you've been done the training for deliverance, or was there no difference to how you felt? Did you feel
protected?
Threatened?
So I felt threatened then. Most of the time, I don't really feel anything. I don't really feel protected or not protected. Sometimes I go and see people and I feel threatened by, but sometimes that can be by them. You know, some of the people we see are experiencing all sorts of things. Some of it maybe, you know, due to mental health issues, and, you know, sort of being with somebody who's experiencing sort of mental health issues when you're on your own, you're actually quite vulnerable. You know, so I'm not particularly afraid of the paranormal. I'm sort of slightly wary of some of the people I've met. And you know, the paranormal doesn't bother me anymore.
Prior to being Reverend Dr Jason Bray is your full title. I know you said just call me Jason, but that's your title. You weren't.
Please just call me Jason.
Young Jason, as a child, in that kind of environment, and then what were you? Obviously, I know you were brought up around religion. It's always been in your life. Was there ever talk of the paranormal in the household? Was it something that was taboo? You didn't speak about, you didn't acknowledge it, or was it matter of fact?
It was fairly matter of fact. It wasn't. You know, there were stories in the family about sort of people having seen ghosts. It was just sort of one of those things. I remember, you know, at one stage not particularly liking being in the house. It's a sort of big, sort of big, quite old house, and you know, with creaking staircases and all sorts of things. And the sort of house is really easy to spook yourself out in. You know, at one stage my parents were trying to stop me watching Scooby-Doo because I was a bit sort of a bit frightened by Scooby-Doo when I was a nipper. But no, it wasn't something that was taboo. It's just something that we've spoken about, and since then, of course, you know, particularly since I became a deliverance minister, various members of the family have sort of told me their stories. But I keep meeting people. You know, I meet my parishioners now. And they say, "Yeah, we read your book. Actually, strangely enough, something like that happened to us once." You know, and it's only when you start opening up yourself that you realise that you know, lots of people seem to have had those experiences. So the family. I say in the book, they're not Bible bashers by any means. You know, they went to church, you know, my dad still goes to church occasionally. My mum died about 12 years ago now. But they're not Bible bashers. They're not sort of, you know, fundamentalists of any description. They're you know, just sort of fairly normal people who go to church.
When you think about it, when you think about it from a young age, then do you think that you can ever think back to a time when you might have experienced the paranormal before adult Jason was ordained?
Right. Maybe with, you know, not really actually. I can remember moving into a new flat. And haven't told this story in the book, but and just this sort of feeling that somebody was almost like interviewing me. Again, not, you know, I didn't see anything, but just this sort of feeling that when I walked into a particular room, you know, somebody was, you know, sort of basically assessing me in some way or other. You know, and I got a sort of, you know, when I walked away, I was able to talk to Laura. You know, I think that, you know, she's my girlfriend at the time, and you know, sort of saying really weird, but nothing, you know, sort of nothing particularly paranormal, nothing, you know, sort of no footsteps, you know, around the house, nothing shooting around, nothing really.
I've also noticed, you know, I'm a bit of a stickler for when I read things. I try to read exactly what the author's trying to say in certain lines. And I noticed that you do say in the book, you mentioned it's important that you need to be confident in your deliverance service, so that the person who you're carrying out the service for believes that what you were doing will help them. Is that alluded to sometimes where there's maybe something that's not paranormal, but it's a placebo effect that kind of, if they feel confidence in you, then things might stop for them? Yeah,
I think that's, it could be the placebo effect in some cases. Sometimes when we're dealing with people with, poltergeist activity, which we reckon is always triggered by somebody, by somebody alive and present in the house. Effectively, what we're doing is I suppose, some sort of placebo effect. That if you give people, if you say, we have now dealt with it, they're able to, sort of move on in some way, and able to say, okay, well, actually, there isn't anything paranormal. There's nothing to be afraid of. That's it. And it's Terry Pratchett talks about headology in some of his books. That sort of feeling that if you turn up and you look as if you know what you're doing, people will believe you. I'm not saying that I've seen some absolutely spectacular things in my time, but sometimes actually it is just a matter of people spooking themselves out. And if you get somebody like me in, that gives them the reassurance and the confidence maybe to be able to move on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, to be honest with you. I think the mind's a very powerful thing, and obviously a lot of the time it can solve a lot of problems. It can create them, but it can also solve them, whether you're intending it to or not. Just another great point you just raised there is I was really fascinated about, again, like I said, about how transparent you are in the book. And you categorize activities or hauntings as three things: the poltergeist, place memories, and true hauntings. The poltergeist one, I thought, was the first time I'd seen somebody kind of put it into a book as you had. But it's strange. You describe poltergeist activity as almost like a human creative phenomenon. That it's telekinesis, it's being able to move objects through emotions, heightened emotions. And I do know that for many, many years I've had that's been the same kind of thought that I've had. In fact, I think sometimes they call poltergeists in certain areas in Germany, they call them poltergeist girls, because they believe it's young adolescent girls that can create this. When you think about classic horror movies with poltergeists in them, there's always young girls that seem to be creating that thing, Harry, So is this something that's taught, or is this something that you've kind of tested the water and gone, no, I think it's human emotion?
Right. It's effectively when we go in the training, that's basically what we're told. That it is triggered, caused, owned by somebody alive and present in the house. I've got a sort of little handout that I have occasionally given out to people called My Poltergeist, which basically explains how you deal with them, and you basically sort of treat them fairly normally, and then they just go away effectively because they're caused by that. But I've seen the pattern repeatedly that people have had a row. You get it with adolescents. Get it with adolescent boys as well as girls. It's not just it's not just girls. You sometimes get it with people who are experiencing some sort of trauma in adult life. People who are terminally ill, maybe people who are sort of have something that they can't express, and then you also get it at the end of people's lives as well, when particularly when people are beginning Alzheimer's, when there's that sort of confusion stage, and they are struggling to express themselves, and you do get sort of old ladies who hear rattling and the sort of the door knocking, and it's just something that is somehow something that you can't express, and that almost earths itself. It's like that sort of build-up of static electricity, and it just goes bang. Sort of shoes, classically. I don't know why it's always shoes, but shoes will move.
Yeah, I noticed it's shoes.
Sort of somebody says my shoes are moving. Great. Right, fine. I know what's going on here. Socks again. So there was one guy who rang me up and said, I'm really sorry about this, blah blah blah. You're the deliverance minister. My socks keep going missing. Anything else? No. He said my socks keep going missing. So towards the end of his life, maybe he was beginning to suffer from sort of some sort of confusion of some description. So goodness knows what was going on there. But you do get that sort of that sort of phenomenon, and people film it. I describe in the book one stage where somebody filmed poltergeist activity happening. It was a chain. She was wearing a necklace, and the necklace was moving. And good grief, it's boring. Yeah. There's some people think, podcast activities must be so exciting. No, actually, you just sort of, okay, you've got, how long's the film? 2 minutes? Okay. Right. What I want to do is to sort of work out what's causing this to happen, not the fact that it is happening.
Yeah, I agree as well about, you mentioned this in your book as well about kind of how everything's become, everything's explained to us through the media. So everything's Hollywood. When we think of poltergeist, we think of the movie Spielberg. When we think of aliens, we think of E.T. Everything's kind of, we've got a perception of it. It's been kind of I know by a program, but programmed into us that this is how it is. And I've kind of always said to people, I mean, I've not mentioned this to you already, but I used to write for a local paper here called The Sentinel, a weekly column called Supernatural Staffordshire. It was a hobby of mine. I just thought it was fascinating. People used to contact me with lots of stories. But it was how subtle the actual paranormal activity was, that if it was subtle, I normally thought, well, yeah, this sounds like a viable kind of story to me. Yeah. And then if people said, oh, no, I was thrown all around the room and everything, I'd be like, well, I'd like to see that then first, because it's there. So I think you're right. I think subtle paranormal activity normally, that pricks my ears up, and I start to consider that. Place memories now. This is where my father, I spoke to him the other day, and when he was a young man, he was quite religious. I think he actually started moving towards doing the training for a Catholic priest at one point.
Oh, okay.
But I just thought he's always had a very strange kind of closed view on the paranormal. He wouldn't normally speak to me that much about stuff, and he'd make little kind of comments and a bit of a wink, and I didn't know if he was lying to me or telling me the truth. And I rang him the other day, and I told him I was going to be speaking to you, and I basically said, Dad, what do you think ghosts are? And he said, I'll let you know. So phone went down. A bit later, he texted me, and he just said, I think ghosts are just recordings playing out over and over again. That's what he thinks it is, and that made me think of the place memories that you're talking about.
Yeah, and again, they're sort of recorded, for want of a better word, instances of people. The classic ones, that sort of the Roman soldiers in the house on the close of York Minster. Well, they're sort of walking through it knee high, and that's where the praetorium was. They're not trying to communicate with you; they're just walking through. Borley Rectory might have been another one. Sort of famously the most haunted house in England. People kept seeing monks and nuns, and goodness knows what. Why there would be monks and nuns in the same house, I'm not quite sure. You do wonder whether there's a bit of fakery about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Still, that sort of thing, seeing somebody going about their daily business that's just, not, sort of not physically present. And enough people have seen that sort of thing for me to sort of think, actually, maybe there's something to that. There was one I went to, again, it's not a story in the book, where somebody'd seen, there was the previous owner of the house had fallen down the stairs and broken his neck at the bottom of the stairs. And she used to step over him occasionally, at the bottom of the stairs. Sort of slightly bizarre.
Yeah. It's just on a side note there, by the way, Borley Rectory. That was the story originally, the story that got me hooked into the paranormal. Right, but I do agree that it was the one thing that got me fascinated and in love with the paranormal. But also, as years gone by, and I took it more of a science approach to things. I need to be proved. I'm like I'm a very optimistic kind of. I sat on the fence, and you've got to prove it to me. If someone tells me a story, I won't say that you're lying to me, but I need to see it. For me to and there's very few things I've witnessed that I can say are paranormal. There's things, though. There's definitely things. And I can say I started researching it, and I think it was Harry Price. He was the investigator that took on Borley Rectory, and he coined the phrase "the most haunted house." It's only after I don't know if you know this, but after he passed away, he came to light that he was actually a member of the Magic Circle, and he was a fantastic magician. And a lot of people said he just did it to try to create this. I think there's actually a film coming out about Harry Price and Bully Rectory along the lines of it was all faked. But again, you know, it wasn't there. So, but there was some crazy things that happened there.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't. My son, Tom, who's he's the expert on these things. He's read all the books. I've just written the book, but
So Tom, how old's Tom now then?
What?
How old's Tom now?
Yes, I ought to know.
Is
24.
Okay, but I do the same. My book kids enough to go. Hang on, he's So I take it. What's if you didn't mind me asking, what's Tom's view on the paranormal? Is he fascinated, a believer, a non-believer?
He's just fascinated. He's fascinated by all the stuff, but the sort of ghost pictures. And he said, well, actually, they do this by, it's much easier to do it on older technology than it is, actually, this is how they fake this. So, but he's, he's read much more of the books. He's, sort of watched the films, watched the programs. He's just sort of interested in it, but then he's interested in a whole load of things. So, but it's just one of the things that fascinates him.
How awesome it must be then that he's fascinated by it. And his dad is a deliverance minister for a living. I bet every time you come in from a case, he's like, "What happened? What happened? Then can you tell us?"
Yeah, well, obviously you try not to get into too much detail, but it's we were having a conversation the other night. He was telling me about some some artifact in America, some sort of haunted doll that was whatever. And he was telling me about this, and I said, Tom, actually, you don't need to tell me about this. It's this, actually, I do this. Oh, he said, yeah, I forgot. Okay.
That was wonderful.
But
true hauntings have got to be, obviously, that's the most spectacular as it would be of all kind of the panel.
Yeah, in a sense, because that's where you see somebody usually, who is trying to communicate in some way.
Yeah.
So the communication might be a direct thing, sort of grandma trying to show you where the premium bonds were kept. Sadly, this didn't happen with us, actually, but there you go. As a family, we still can't find my grandmother's premium bond. So, she's listening to this program. Can you let us know?
You can email us the bond.
Yeah, email us. Yeah, sometimes it can be a sort of protection thing. And I talk in the book about the sort of, there are a couple of instances. There's a Pete story where sort of friend keeps appearing, and lots of people actually saw him independently, and then there's somebody else who sort of sees somebody, maybe father-in-law, maybe somebody else on the stairs, and just that sort of really weird, is this somebody's trying to communicate with me or not? Actually they're, in a sense, the most spectacular because it's somebody
and it's tangible, isn't it? It's like there's a connection. You can when I say there's a connection, as in they can see you can see them. So there's an obvious communication level there, rather than an image playing out. The
Roman soldiers walking through the walking through the basement. They're not interested in you. Terrified. They terrify the wits out of you, but they're not really there in any real sense. Your ex appearing in the bathroom is a completely different matter.
Yeah, like I say, I won't spoil it for everybody, but there's some. The other thing I want to congratulate you on is the stories that you go and. They're fantastic little bite sizes, so you can read one and then you're like, it's like binge watching something on Netflix. You read one, and you're like, I need to read the next one now. And I was flicking through last night. Some of the stories, obviously, these are a mixed bag of everything from people willingly or unwillingly and paranormal. It's just such a good read. It really is. I've been ranting and raving to everybody about how good it is. Fantastic. Is there going to be a Deliverance 2?
I don't know. Yes, it depends on whether they want me to write one. One of the things about it is that there is a specific handle on this particular book. So a friend of mine read it, and she said she's an academic, and she said it's like a sort of lecture series. So what you've done is you've got like a 10-week lecture course, and I hadn't structured it in that way at all. But she said, the first one's introduction, then you talk about you talk a bit about the background and the training, and then you talk about poltergeist activity, and you talk you're dealing with it in that way. In a sense, writing a sequel, what I wouldn't want to do is write a sort of series of unconnected ghost stories.
Yeah.
So there was a definite theme and a definite structure to it, and I like structures. So in a sense, as I was writing the book, even though there were lots of individual stories, it was the overall structure that was it was really interesting me. And in a sense, if I'm going to write a second one, I've got enough material to do it. Good grief, it would have to have some sort of structure rather than just being here's another load of ghost stories. I hope you enjoy the first ones, and which would just be less, actually less interesting for me, certainly. But a lot of people, I occasionally dip my toes into the Amazon reviews, and there's can we have more ghost stories? Cut the boring theology bits. But that's part of the story as well. Really.
Well, the reason I was so excited as well to speak to you about this particular subject, it's a subject that I've actually been wanting to try to do for such a long time, is to speak to somebody in your position. It was a strange coincidence that I actually walked into the kitchen the morning that you were on Good Morning with Phil and Ollie, and I was walking past and I stopped, and my missus kind of pointed at the TV and said, "Didn't you want to speak to somebody like him?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can't believe that somebody's done that," because obviously I never expected to be a book coming out, from from a position. So I suppose the question I'm asking is, I had lots of doors shut in my face when I was trying to speak to somebody. I've always been honest, so I used to approach various churches, and I'd say the phone call would kind of go, "Hello, can you tell me whether you do exorcisms or house clearances?" And they'd say, "Yeah, can I take some details?" Then I'd say, "I don't want to go cloak and dagger on you, so I'm going to tell you. I write for the local paper. I wanted to do an article on like kind of interviewing the exorcist." And then the phone would go dead. Literally, they put the phone down on me. So I did eventually get through to seeing a priest. He asked me to kind of almost jump through some hoops. He asked me to turn up at a couple of sermons on a Sunday morning, sit through them and various things. And then it kind of turned out that he did a blessing on me. I didn't know what was happening at the time. And I left him, one brother who's... Yeah, I turned up at this church on Sunday morning, and he'd asked me to go there. Sorry?
So he was treating you as if you were one of his clients?
He was treating me... I think he was treating me as if I'd got something inside me.
Yeah, okay, right.
Because long story short, my mother passed away some years ago, 14 years ago, and she was a wonderful person, and she was always very spiritual, as in, and I know you talk about spirituality in the book, but spiritual as in, she believed we don't just die. We don't just die. She said, "Damien, we don't just die. You carry on. You do carry on. You'll see people that you love again." And when you got to the point in her life, she'd had a stroke, a brain hemorrhage, and they were going to have to turn the machine off. I went in with her because I didn't want to be on her own, and I held her hand, and kind of the last thing I said to her, because they told me she couldn't hear me, but the last thing I said to her was, "Mum, don't fight it anymore. Just let it take you, because you know as well as I do, it's only with physically dying. You'll still be there. You'll still see me. We'll still see each other. You will be together again." And then a tear came out of her eye and she stopped breathing. So for a while afterwards, I got withdrawn, and I started very privately to myself, beating myself up over believing in it, because I kind of thought what if the last thing I said to my mum was a lie? So that was kind of like, it's been very personal to me, a journey then to try and find out if spirits do exist. Because in my head, I thought, if I could meet a priest that carries out deliverance or exorcisms, and they would allow me go along and watch one, and I witnessed evil. I mean, I was obviously sitting in the Hollywood part of my brain at the time. It was like kind of, right, convince me that evil exists, because if you can convince me evil exists, then good exists.
Yeah, okay.
Well, if a bad person exists, so does my mum still. That was the kind of thought in my head. So I rang this, like I say, it took me about 3 or 4 phone calls, and my twin brother, who's he's Catholic, he kind of had a word with someone for me, and eventually I got through to, I presume it's a similar role that you've got. This chap overlooks the whole of this area we live in. He invited me. Yeah, he invited me along to, all he said was turn up Sunday morning, sit through the sermon, and then at the end, we'll talk. And all I asked was, can I come along to an exorcism? He said, do this for me first. So I turned up on the Sunday morning, sat right at the back because I didn't want people shouting me up or anything. And we got to the end. It was a fantastic sermon. There was all tambourines and people were dancing around. It was
one of those.
Energy. Got to the end, and I realised that the person delivering it was a lady. And I'm thinking, well, I remember meeting a man, so where is he? And just as we got to the end of the sermon, I turned around and a priest opened the door behind me and then shut it and walked off. So I thought, right, I'll catch him quick. So I went after him down the corridor and introduced myself, and he wouldn't look me in the eye. He was looking all around me. He was looking at the ceiling, at the floor, everywhere. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He asked me if I wanted a coffee. I had a coffee off him. He took me back into the room where everybody was. He told me to place the coffee on the floor. And then he proceeded to say, close your eyes. And I could see his hand through like my eyes. You can see when it's sunny. His hand came on my face. And he was saying things like, you know, oh Lord, please take Damon's mother and look after and nurture and protect Damon. And he just went through a lot of different kind of chants. And I was all confused at what was going on.
Okay.
So he just said to me, come back next week and we'll do this for a few weeks and then we'll see about the exorcism. And I went, okay. So I went outside and rang my twin brother and I said, look, you know more about this than I do. What was going on? And he said, I think he just conducted an exorcism on you. And I was like, really? Okay. So he inadvertently, I've been part of an exorcism, but it's had no effect, so I don't think I've got anything inside of me.
Yeah, okay. That's extraordinary, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I'm quite happy to talk about my experience. Well, I'm now quite happy to talk about my experiences. I wasn't actually. You know, I was basically in the same position as everyone else. But I got outed effectively by the Sunday Times. So somebody.
This is one of my gold. This was one of my gold questions. You see.
Okay.
I want you to say to you. So why you and why now? Why did you decide to release such information?
Right. Basically, what happened was that you know, I've been doing this for quite some time. A friend of mine is an academic lawyer. Right. You know, she's a lawyer. She teaches law. Sorry. Yeah. Probably a better way of putting it. So she's interested in this sort of thing, and was running a seminar on, or day seminar actually, on exorcism and human rights. So basically working on the principle that if you are being exorcised, properly exorcised, you would not give your consent. So is this a violation of your human rights that somebody is conducting a religious, a religious ritual on you against your will?
Yeah.
And you know, it's a hot subject in some branches of law. So basically, my function was to basically go along and sort of say, actually, this is what we do. Partly, you know, it was the people who are. Some of them were actually quite experienced deliverance ministers, exorcists, if you want to call us that. Some of them were sort of new. Some of them were from the academic community, and effectively, I was the warm-up act before they went into the serious stuff that was going on. So the whole day you want something that's going to be maybe a little bit more entertaining. So I sort of went through roughly what I do. Somebody put their hand up at the back, questions, and said, have you had any interfaith involvement? So I thought about it, and I said, actually, there was once, this Muslim family, blah, blah, blah. It was, they claimed they'd seen the ghost of a monk. Local imam wouldn't go out, Christian ghost. So I went along, and, as the conversation progressed, it, became abundantly clear that nobody's seen anything, but there was some poltergeist activity, blah, blah, blah. Great. As they progressed, there was sort of talks about, deliverance practices from other parts of the world, and all sorts of other things being thrown into the mix as we went through. Didn't think anything of it. That was in November, I think. And then in the January, somebody rang me from the Sunday Times and said, we've got this story about you. Have you? Yeah, great. Right, so the story goes, you were invited to conduct the exorcism of a Muslim lady, but you refused because you thought that she might be sexually, ritually abused. Is this true? Wow. I think, where on earth have you got this from? Well, actually, there was somebody at the, conference who basically sort of told us this story about you. We're going to publish it, whether you like it or not. What's your side of the story? So I gave them my side of the story, and then I sort of thought, oh, no, I've been had, sort of rode back on it slightly, but yeah, so the story was published. It was at the time when, if you can remember, before Brexit, Theresa May's government was falling apart again. So he said, nobody would be interested in your story. He said, the government's falling apart. So, nobody would be interested. So it was obviously on page 5 of the Sunday Times, page 1, the front page of the Express, the Mail, the sort of Star, the whole lot. They all ran the story. And so the following morning, somebody rang, said, hello, I'm a literary agent. I think there's a book in this. Oh, wow. And I said, I'm not actually terribly interested in writing a book. I just sort of want to, want my head to disappear down behind the parapet and just get on with my life. Thank you very much. And he said, well, actually, your head is already above the parapet.
Yeah.
So, this story is circulating about you, and you already have some sort of public profile doing this. It's all over the internet. You might as well write it. So I thought long and hard about it. In fact, I thought for months about it. Spoke to my bishop, who said, yeah, okay, go for it. Just share the royalties with me. It's basically what he said. But he said, actually, seriously, maybe this is a good thing to do. The church in Wales, press secretary said, actually, you know what? I've been trying to get somebody to write this story for ages, because there was so much misunderstanding, and people are just sort of taken by charlatans, and just sort of getting the church's side of the story might be helpful. So I finally agreed to sort of put pen to paper, not to actually finger to keyboard, and wrote the book, and Hodder very kindly agreed to publish it. But as part of that initial conversation with Hodder, they said, would you be prepared to do media stuff? I said, yeah, okay, yeah, that'll be fine. So that's how I ended up on this morning.
Yeah, I have to say, I completely agree. I think what you've done is a wonderful thing all around, because if people haven't got the answers from all sides of the story, like you said, what happens then is people do think of the Hollywood kind of the painting. Yeah. So, like me, up until probably reading your book, I presumed that the head spinning round and people would be floating in the air, and people, horrendous things were happening. Like the Exorcist and the Exorcism of Emily Rose and all sorts of things. And I think the fact that you've done this, you respect the records. I think you said, no, this is what happens. It's more. How can I put it? It's more earthy. It's more like kind of, it's tangible. It's there.
Yeah,
it's what you think about the book.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day about, we'd like to come and film you. Well, actually, I'm not sure that anybody would, sort of actually really want to film this sort of thing. And B, if there's something dramatic going on, it will have happened before I get there.
Yeah.
I've only once experienced some sort of spectacular drama when somebody's thrown themselves on the floor and is sort of writhing around.
Yeah.
Only once. That's not in the book actually. Strangely enough. But that sort of that whole the drama happened somewhere else, and I'm just sort of picking up the pieces afterwards really. But there is that sort of talking in the book about the internet.
Yeah.
People go on the internet. My shoes are moving. Am I possessed?
Yeah.
Yes is the answer.
Yeah.
And of course,
it's a dangerous place. The internet.
Yeah, and the sort of conspiracy theories, and of course, when people are feeling vulnerable, when they're feeling just sort of and podcast activity quite often happens to, when people are feeling vulnerable, the whole sort of poltergeist, I've got a poltergeist, am I possessed? The internet will say yes, of course you are. But if you pay this money, we will.
I suppose you've just said something there which is very poignant as well. We've not touched on that. Do people get possessed?
Theoretically.
Theoretically, okay.
So we are, it's part of the training. They take you on this, retreat center, like sort of. Those of you who've never been to sort of people listening who've never been to a retreat center. Retreat center is like a hotel that isn't a hotel. Yeah. It's like sort of you're lucky if you get an ensuite room, and it'll be cold and uncomfortable, and anyway. So they take you along to one of these places, and often converted schools. And we got shown a whole load of films. So there's a film of somebody, and is this person possessed? You watch the film, and there's sort of somebody who's sort of speaking normally, and then they go into demonic voice, and the answer is no, they're not. They're suffering from schizophrenia, and the whole series of series of these sorts of things. So there's the theoretical possibility that somebody might be possessed. So we're looking for three things, and I've outlined this in the book. First is knowledge of languages that you haven't studied. So it's called xenoglossolalia, but it's sort of if you speak a particular if you come across somebody speaking a particular dialect of Arabic or something or other, that they can't possibly have studied, or they're sort of slang Roman, slang Latin, that's a fairly good sign that something peculiar is going on. Second thing is that they will very often have preternatural knowledge of stuff. So they'll know stuff they shouldn't know, your sexual history, the contents of your internet browser, the fact that you've got sort of two families on the go, that you've got a gambling addiction, whatever it is. If they know, if you walk into the room and they say, "Yeah, I know you. I saw you on Ladbrokes last night, and you spent 10 million, £10,000 of your wife's money on gambling." Okay, well, how could they possibly know that? And the third thing is the preternatural strength. So if they then throw the boardroom table at you across the room, that's that would be another sign. Theoretically, you're looking for all three. If you see one of them, you start to run. But the chances are that. Sorry,
I take it these are extremely rare cases, then.
Yeah, and I've spoken to described in the book that there was a guy at the conference who'd actually experienced one of these things, and they were in that case. I think the person in question was sort of they two priests had gone in, and she knew things about the other priest that she shouldn't really have known. So she was in a psychiatric hospital because that's where these things are likely to happen. You've got those things going on. Yeah. People are going to think that you are psychotic, really. Yeah. the psychiatrists won't have a clue what's going on. So they might get, might eventually tear their hair out and sort of, okay, perhaps you need an exorcist. So exorcist goes in and, does his or her stuff. And, in that instance, the psychiatrists, the medics, were absolutely convinced that this person had been possessed and that they'd driven demons from her. And the priests walked out and said, "Nah, we're not convinced. We think she was, it's possession syndrome, some sort of, almost like a personality disorder."
Yeah, yeah. So is that something that a deliverance minister could still get called to attend? You mentioned the word exorcism. Is it different? Exorcism, deliverance?
Right. Okay. Yeah. We tend to call ourselves deliverance ministers, partly because if you talk about the exorcist, people.
That word.
Yeah. You just cannot use the word without people conjuring up images of the Hollywood film.
Yeah.
And despite the fact there's a picture of me on the book. With.
Yes.
Picture me in the book wearing, wearing a trilby and long black coat and carrying a bag. Actually, I do wander around like that because I just sort of think it's quite a sort of it sort of suits me in some sort of way. But and that's coincidence more than anything else. So I'm just going to move briefly. So the light behind me has spookily gone off. It's one of these motion sensor things. Okay. So hope that's all right. So, but
so is there a big difference then between deliverance ministers, exorcism, or is it just a word, a title?
Right. Yeah. So we call the whole thing generally deliverance ministry because exorcism is something that we refer to as two specific things. We talk about minor exorcisms, which is praying for somebody to be delivered from evil, which is actually what we're doing in the Lord's Prayer, and deliver us from evil.
Yeah.
So that we would call that a minor exorcism, but a major exorcism, which is what most people think of as being an exorcism as such, is when you are specifically saying. Go from this place in the name of the Lord Jesus, go to the place prepared for you, blah, blah, blah. So when you are literally casting out a demon, that would be a major exorcism. And because it's only a theoretical possibility, most of what we do is we bless houses, we say requiem masses, we bless people, we anoint people, but we almost never, sort of perform major exorcisms.
Have you been part of a major exorcism yourself?
Sorry? No.
Have you ever been part of it?
Sorry?
Have you ever been part of a major exorcism yourself?
No. It's very few Anglican deliverance ministers will ever have been part of it. So we're trained for it. Yeah. We've got, it's, as I said, it's a theoretical possibility, but you have to have the permission of the bishop. So I've been licensed by the bishop. I have the bishop's permission to do what I do, and so. Yeah, you need the bishop's permission. Theoretically, you're supposed to ring the bishop and say, I've been contacted by the local psychiatric hospital. They have asked me to perform a major exorcism. Can you give me the words? And because theoretically, bishops at some stage were given the words that they allow us to use. Right. Apparently, if you are in this situation, what would normally happen is the bishop would go, help. And you'd say, it's okay, these are the words I'm proposing to use from my, from the little booklet that's in the back of the deliverance bag. So have the words handy. And, they say, yeah, go ahead. But permission is theoretically granted only once and, sort of only for that specific instance. So occasionally you will come across Anglican deliverance ministers or Anglican clergy who run around and say, I have the bishop's permission to do what I like. Actually, yeah.
I've also just noticed when we were talking then, you seem to be actually answering a lot of my questions ahead of me asking the question. But I was going to ask you, angels, demons, real or not? You actually just mentioned then about casting the demon out.
Yeah. Okay. As I said, it's a theoretical possibility.
Yeah.
Somebody who'd be demon possessed would be inclined to evil anyway. So occasionally I've come across people who have made my skin crawl.
Yeah.
I describe in the book, there's a specific instance of somebody that I felt was actually exceedingly evil and was trying really hard to damage me.
Okay.
It was just the most uncomfortable experience of my life. They said, they were trying to help, but just sort of, in that conversation, feeling my flesh crawl.
Yeah.
As this person was there in front of me, and that felt like being in the presence of evil. At what stage that spills over into possession, I don't know, because possession would be classically that an entity that's not you has taken over, has taken over your entire being, allowing you to throw stuff around, to speak languages you've never studied, and to know stuff about people.
Do you think it's possible for a spirit, a negative one, to the point of a demon, hypothetically, to cause harm to another person without being in a physical body? I suppose what I'm saying is, can ghosts, or to the point of demons, do you think it's possible they can actually harm somebody?
If somebody, not in themselves, I would say. So if somebody is,
they require a conduit. They require a physical body to do that from.
Yeah, because the whole idea behind demons and indeed angels is that they are spiritual things, spiritual entities. You would need somebody to do it for you, and presumably that's how that one would work. As I said, it's something that we encounter exceedingly rarely. Although you do hear about stories of people. I was watching some footage to watch of a Christian exorcism in the States that had done the rounds. It was on social media, and this guy was they were naming the demons. There was a demon of fornication, and a demon of lust, and a demon of whatever it was, sexual impropriety, and this guy was just there, and these demons were being cast out.
The other thing I wanted to ask, maybe you've never been asked this question before, because I thought it was quite a clever question. The same way that holy water is blessed, and so it's once normal water, and now it has some sort of power. And I have heard stories in the past of different ministers conducting exorcisms where they switch water from normal water to holy water to see whether there was a response or it was a placebo effect that was going on.
Okay.
Does the same thing happen when you complete your training as do you have different powers compared to a normal minister? Do you just have more knowledge than them, so you've just got the rules? How does it work? Are you more protected in your role now that you know about it?
Okay. I think I've got more experience. So what we're doing is we're using stuff to formally invite God to deal with things. So any deliverance ministry, any ministry that I do, I'm doing as a priest, as a man of God, person of God, whatever. And we're actually asking God to formally deal with stuff. In a sense, with I've got a lot more experience of these things, so I can walk into a situation and sort of say, actually, I think I know what's going on here, a lot more readily than other clergy, and that's just experience. So there'll be other people who would be much better at doing Oh gosh, other things. School assemblies. School assemblies terrify the wits out of me. The sort of give me a demon any day. Classroom with kids. I do it. We all do it, but there are some people who are going to be an awful lot better at it than me. So that sort of effectively, it's on that sort of level. We're also properly insured. So there was a sort of thing relatively recently with the ecclesiastical insurance company that sort of insures us properly. So if you normal clergy, sort of who aren't proper deliverance ministers, who aren't formal deliverance ministers, they can do the job, but they might not be insured, and they're only insured if they consulted us first.
So I suppose it's more, I suppose it's more about then knowledge of power. So it's just that you've got different tools to handle, not the school assembly, which terrifies you, but you've all got the correct tools to address the task that you've been given to do.
And it's it's a specialism like lots of ministerial specialisms. You get sort of people who are chaplains, hospital chaplains, hospice chaplains, prison chaplains. The sort of thing that if I had to go and see somebody in prison, well, I have actually. That's okay, but I'm not sure that that's something I'd be particularly good at. And it's the same with this, really. It's just sort of one of those things that you develop a particular specialism for. It just sounds like it's more exciting, but actually most of the time it isn't.
Okay. Do you get scared? I mean, when you go to places, or do you get worried you might bring things home with you? Any kind of attachments? Do you ever worry in your job?
I do occasionally. As I said, occasionally I get worried because I'm with somebody who could be disturbed, quite clearly is disturbed in some cases. And even though we try to go out in pairs, just occasionally you might find yourself sort of in the church, for example, people just turn up and say, I'm possessed. They're likely to be disturbed, and that's actually making you quite vulnerable. In terms of sort of bringing stuff home, I'm not particularly bothered about that. Driving home in the dark, I sort of, describe in the book about how often I get lost. Somebody was sort of, commenting, sort of when the Amazon reviewers were sort of saying, he always gets lost on the way. Actually, that's true. I do always get lost. Sat navs are awful. When you're desperately trying to find a specific house, it is a complete nightmare. It is literally the story of my life. But sometimes I've been driving home from these things, and I thought, actually, you can't see the back of the car, and you're just sort of one of those moments where you think, is there something in the back of the car? There isn't.
So the other thing probably then is, now we know where we are with stuff. Let's just say, hypothetically again, we come off air together today. Your phone goes. There's a gentleman there who says, "I've got a problem. My wife is upstairs. It looks like it's a major exorcism that's required. Like there's a demon there, really powerful." Heading out to that, would you still feel really protected if you knew you were going up against something that could be so powerful? Would you still feel protected?
Right. As I said, the chances are that if you're going to encounter something like that, it would be in the context of a psychiatric hospital. So there would be, because people would be exceedingly disturbed. So there would be medical professionals there. If you're going to do, one of these things, that's roughly where it would be. As I said, we go out in pairs. So somebody rang me up now and said, I want you to come around and deal with this issue. I'd be, I sit, I listen to them, talk to them, talk you through, try and work out a little bit about what's going on, and then sort of say, okay, I'll ring you back because I'm going to phone a friend. We'll come out in pairs, and which is actually really useful because sometimes I miss things. So we, I went out with a colleague the other day who sort of said, something slightly odd there. Did you notice? And I said, no, I didn't, because I was too busy concentrating on what they were saying rather than, rather than to look round. And so he picked up a couple of details. I was thinking, actually, that's really interesting. Something that I hadn't picked up.
Okay, and we talk about your bag. Can we find out what is inside the Deliverance minister's bag?
Right. Yeah. How's the light? Is that
It's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Fine,
Right. Brilliant. Because the sun's starting to come in in.
Yeah. No, I can see you really well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Just have this on the desk. So talk about in the book Cross of St Benedict. That's what that looks like. We can just hold it next to the camera. And so it's got a medal in it. So that's St Benedict himself there. Yeah. Okay.
And the cross is blessed. Is the cross blessed as well?
Yeah, I would bless them, but then that's a sort of standard thing that I do. Anyway, so it's a crucifix, and I wear it. It makes me feel better. Yeah. Whether it acts as any protection or not, I don't know. But I don't wear it because I think it really protects me. I just just wear it because it just makes me feel better.
Okay.
So what else have I got in here? I've got another crucifix that I tend to sort of put on the table. I've got a stole. Stole is the sort of standard, it's like liturgical scarf.
Yes.
So this one looks like that, and it's been. So I wear that over my shoulders, usually when I'm doing something like this. They come in various colours. I've got holy water sprinkler. So it looks like that. So I've got two actually. I've got this is the really big one, and I've also got a small one as well for. I sort of started off with this one, and then I thought, actually, I keep having to fill it. So, and basically, you just sort of twist the top, fill it with the holy water, twist the top, and it. Sorry. And the water comes out. I'm not going to throw it at my screen, but yeah. So it's sort of and it's sort of specially designed for that sort of thing. Here it's got.
Is the salt involved in the holy water?
Sorry?
Is the salt as well involved in the holy water?
So I've got water here that I'm able to bless just in case as we go around, and I've got salt. So I've got little packs of salt. So that's
and that's to put inside the holy water.
That's for the holy water, yeah. Again, salt's traditionally a sort of symbol of cleansing, and it's just sort of there's a prayer that we use when we bless the holy water, and then you put the salt in it, and you sort of where this salt and water, salt and water are mingled, may you drive away the power of evil or whatever it is. I've got bottle with some wine in it. It's a chalice, which is a communion cup. Just throwing something across the room. So there's a pattern, which is a metal plate. I've got a wafer, communion wafer, in case I need to celebrate the Eucharist or the Mass. I've got, importantly, hand gel.
Yes. Yeah. At the moment, yeah.
I've always carried hand gel. Actually.
Okay, that's fine enough.
Yeah, I've got some little candles as well, tea lights, and a pot of holy oil. So I describe in the book anointing people for healing. So this is the oil for healing, and there's a little piece of cotton wool in there, and you put the oil in the cotton wool, and then you sort of put your finger in the oil and anoint people with it, sort of make the sign of the cross in their forehead. And then I've got a whole load of books as well. So
I'm just going to say, obviously, what comes to mind when you think about somebody carrying out this kind of a service, straight away you think cross, Bible. I mean, has a Bible carried part of any of the service that you provide, or is it scriptures? Are they things that are written separately? Are they words that you wouldn't find in a Bible that you could use?
Yeah, I haven't got a Bible in here at the moment. Put it that
Okay.
way. So if I need, so I've got yeah, I've got the various cloths of different descriptions. Yeah, I've got a sort of series of texts that I'd use. So you know, I've got sort of things like the Church of England Ministry for the Sick, which has got sort of some of the material I'd use. There are that's the thing that I tend to use most often. Can't really see that in the so it's got the prayers for the blessing of a house, and so I'd use that. I've also got some little crosses that I use as well. So I leave these. They're just wooden crosses. So they look like they're glowing in the but they're just standard wooden crosses. You know, sort of buy for crafting stuff. And I would bless one and leave it behind, and you know, sort of people can do what they want with it. And various other books, none of them particularly exciting. One of them contains the words of the exorcism prayers if we do need it. So I've got an order for celebrating a Eucharist. If I need to, celebrate the Eucharist, if I need to celebrate a Requiem Mass. So that's all, sort of all in the bag, and I just carry it around.
Okay. Also, we talked about ghosts, entities, spirits, and I know we went to the point of demons. Question that most people must ask you when it comes to the regards of ghosts is, if when we die we become spirits, why are we not able to come back and see our loved ones to comfort them and tell them? Is there an answer to that? Is this an unanswerable question?
Right. Sorry, I'm just adjust so that I'm not sort of right. Sorry.
Okay.
Just I'm sort of yes, I have seen the light. Yeah, is the light all right there?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, it's fine.
Are you sure? Okay, right. I can go a little bit further back. Yeah. Just occasionally people do see their loved ones. I've sort of occasionally been asked about this by people, and they might see their loved ones often once, and sort of only once. I occasionally speak to people who are desperate to speak to loved ones, to see loved ones, and you can get all sorts of books about sort of, are birds really, the sort of souls of your loved ones? Robins seem to be a particular, particular favorite. If you see a feather, is it the soul of your loved one? And so I know that there are, people who are really desperate to sort of, see their loved ones afterwards. Most of the time, they simply don't.
Do you think? I mean, that's a good point. Do you think it's possible? I mean, the robin thing is actually a very good point, and things like feathers is another one. People claim if you find white feathers, it's a sign.
Well, if you just walked into our churchyard, we've got peregrine falcons on the, on the tower, and they swoop on, and there are white feathers absolutely everywhere. They seem to sort of like pigeons in particular, and so anybody who's looking for their loved one, if they come here, they'll find materials they want. Sorry.
I suppose again, it is one of them things that kind of, if you want to see something, you'll look for it and you'll find it somehow, and then that's how you'll interpret it. So that's kind of like an inbuilt connection.
Yeah, and one of the things that slightly concerns me about that sort of thing is that when people are desperate, somebody finds a way of making money out of them.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that we, this sort of, I've been asked is, sorry, just move this round so I'm not quite so. Okay. One of the questions that I sometimes get asked is, do you charge for your services? And we simply don't charge at all. In fact, I won't take expenses from people. So if even if I've travelled a reasonable distance, I simply won't take mileage. And it's sort of when, if somebody's desperate, somebody will find a way of making money out of it. So you can go online, you can get yourself, you can get an online exorcism. Presumably, if your shoes are moved across the room, you can go online. Do I have a demon? Do I need to be exorcised? How much will it cost? I've spoken to people over the last, over the last month or so. Sort of, well, how much do you charge? Actually, I've been talking to these people and they charge me blah blah blah. That's really expensive. Sort of, we'll get you in because you're free. Thanks. It makes us feel really special. But there is that sort of preying on vulnerability, and people have accused us of doing this, and the sort of you're just preying on people's vulnerabilities, and we don't seek to make anything out of this other than just to sort of make people's lives better.
Yeah, a few people did say when I mentioned you're coming on, oh, how much is he charging? I said he's not charging.
He charges absolutely nothing at all. Yeah.
But I think it's mentioned in the book as well. I found interesting. I think it's something to do with the Old Testament and about mediumship and the idea of necromancers and obviously.
Yeah.
Do you think? Because I know obviously I do know a few mediums and people who claim to be spiritual mediums, and I know that became really popular back, during World War I, World War II. It was, I think, came over, and it was a way to get a quick buck. They could, you ask the right question, someone's going to say yes, and you keep finding yeses till you convince the person that they're speaking to. But similar ways that you were stood outside the room in your first house, and you had this feeling, this vision. Do you think that humans can have that intuity to kind of pick up on things? And I'm not on about charging, do we have that ability as humans anyway?
Yeah. Described in the book, a couple of sort of instances of encountering people who are basically psychics, and not fairground psychics, not mediums, not sort of but people who just pick up on stuff. There's a family friend that I describe in the book who had particularly awful experience of the Aberfan disaster. I'm from the South Wales Valleys, and Aberfan was something that we all lived with. Really, happened a couple of years before I was born. But it was that shadow that was always cast over, sort of over. Over our lives to some extent, actually. And he was a commercial traveller, and he just happened to be in Aberfan. He looked at the street, and there was, there was a line of hearses. So he sort of panicked, and sort of, he was stopped by an AA patrol officer. Don't get any further than see a line of hearses, and so he ran into a shop, and said, there's something going on out there. This sort of, so it came out, there was nothing. And then 6 months later, or whatever it was, it happened, and he got no control over it at all, and, that deeply frustrating, for him. And he was then, as I said, he was a commercial traveller in those days when, the sort of world was full of commercial travellers. And so he was in a hotel in Dorset or somewhere like that, and watched it happen on TV. And sort of thought, actually, maybe I could have done something about that, but nothing you could do.
No. It's just fascinating the things that. I think it's fascinating what humans can do, whether it's intentionally, whether it's subconsciously. I think definitely what you've done with this book, I have to say, is a wonderful thing for the church. I do really think that, because it's come at the right time as well. I know it's not how you wanted it to come out, but also after the year we've just had with COVID, I think people are more open now to saying, well, hang on a minute, let's stop, let's reevaluate everything we know. So I think it's a perfect time for it. Amazing read, it really is. Don't tell me the ending though, because I've still got the end of the book to go.
Oh, right. It was the Archdeacon. No, sorry.
That's it, yeah. And
so it wasn't the Archdeacon, really. It wasn't the Archdeacon that did it, and they weren't in the crypt, and there wasn't a revolver. Yeah,
and it wasn't the candlestick in the library. I get you.
Okay.
Can I ask you a couple of quick questions then? Is that right?
Please do.
Okay. Ghosts, spirits, are they the same thing?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
In a sense, the ghosts of the spirit, we tend to define ghosts as spirits of the dead in some way. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, and then we've obviously.
And I've been asked that one before.
Yes, we have. Yeah, obviously we've touched on the fact of ghosts, obviously of being of something that no longer it's just running through history. So it's no contact with us, no connection with us. They're oblivious to us. We just catch hold of them for a glimpse. But ghosts or spirits, obviously, well, I would have presumed are humans. So if the person was a good person in life, they're a good person in death. Is that normally how it kind of comes across? It's sometimes do we get, does it get confusing? We've got Beryl that keeps appearing, but she was such a nice woman, but she's acting really negative towards everybody.
Really difficult to know. The true haunting type things, sort of tend to be, tend to be fairly neutral, really. I'm desperately trying to think of sort of story about a sort of malevolent, ghost, really. Occasionally, I suppose you might get this sort of, I don't like what you're doing to my house, which is slightly different from being, completely malevolent. So there's a story about the juggernaut that hits the front of the house where the couple, it was, their little bit of paradise, and but that wasn't a malevolent spirit. It wasn't damaging. It wasn't trying to kill anybody. It was just sort of saying, okay, in as much as we can tell what was happening in that case, because there's always that sort of, in a sense, what we do is we go in, we talk to people, try and work out what's going on, try and work out what's going to help them best, do that, and in that case, that was the end of it. I know it was the end of it because there was some sort of follow up. Sometimes I get called back. Sometimes I don't get called back, and then I discover from somebody else that they're still doing the rounds, and they've asked somebody else to go in.
So when we go to the next level, because obviously this is the one that most people, like I say, ears a prick up to us. When we talk about things like demons, are you taught that they were once human, or were they never human?
I suspect they're probably never human.
Yeah.
Demonology. So there is this. I would have thought that if you are going to equate demons and angels, put them together, they'd be never human. So they're not the sort of ghosts of the past. The ghosts of somebody who is, possessing somebody. They seem to be a sort of specific entity. But as I said, the phenomenon is so rare, and I've never encountered it personally. That ask me one day, and I might have done.
Okay. Well, the other on that, so a demon entity. I wouldn't say demon spirit. A demon entity. Do you think that's something that can interact or can get involved with a person without being invited? I'm thinking of the typical, someone plays on a Ouija board, you invite something inside. Do you think that something can attach somebody or enter into somebody without being invited?
Yeah, you do occasionally get what we call oppression.
Okay.
Really difficult to define, and I'm not sure that I've I've actually ever come across a sort of case of sort of somebody who's formally properly oppressed by an evil entity, rather than just sort of somebody who's suffered from sheer bad luck, or who's just sort of exceedingly down on their luck. Occasionally, you might come across that sort of that sort of thing. Somebody who just sort of feels that they are being oppressed somehow. Maybe that's sort of more of a feeling difficult to diagnosed, with a demon. You're looking for those sort of three things. Whereas, with oppression, much more subtle.
Okay.
So yeah, sometimes some people think that addiction may be some sort of some sort of a form of oppression, and then of course that spills into the demon drink. You're an alcoholic,
Right.
you're then sort of, oh, it's a demon, therefore we can exorcise it, and it starts to sort of go down actually quite a frightening route remarkably quickly.
Have you either had a phone call, or what would happen if the phone rang and it's a production company and they're saying, Jason, we'd love you to come along. We're starting off a new show, like most of them. We want you to be part of it. Would you be up for that?
I've had production companies on the phone. What the production companies want to do is to sort of go out and film me doing a live exorcism, which I couldn't, I couldn't imagine anybody actually wanting, sort of wanting somebody to, sort of entire film, me and an entire film crew in tow, actually doing something. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody about it yesterday. Can we come and film you doing this? Well, actually, getting the permission is going to be a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
It would have to be within my diocese, because I'm only licensed in my diocese, and it would be a nightmare. And whatever's whatever drama is happening happens beforehand.
It does, yeah.
So I just turn up and just sort of say, how you feeling? We'd like to talk you through, sort of give them a huge amount of reassurance, and then sort of say, okay, this is what I'm suggesting. Maybe we can think about blessing your house. Perhaps we can think about blessing you. If you thought about talking to your GP, sort of what sort of medication you want, what's your medical history like, and all that sort of stuff. And that's not terribly exciting TV. If a production company did come along and ask me to be a consultant on something, maybe I'd be more interested. Somebody's actually interested in making a drama about the book. So
I actually think that'd be. I was just going to say to you, I think that would be a wonderful thing, not just for the church, but also I think for people interested in the paranormal, people who've got a healthy interest in the paranormal. I think we need to stand still and reassess everything around us, and perhaps embrace a different world. And this book, to me, opened my eyes to a lot of things that I presumed it was the case. You verified that by putting it in the book, which is wonderful when someone validates something you were thinking. But I think there's still a lot of people that are very, some of the shows that have been out there, paranormal shows, have probably caused more damage to the paranormal world than done them any good. I know it's made it really popular, but it's damaged it, I think.
Yeah, it's really, it's I don't tend to watch those sorts of things.
Yeah.
If they're dramas, I spend most of the time streaming at the television. So there was the thing with oh gosh, never remember what the title was, with Martin Shaw a few years back. He made a drama series about a Roman Catholic exorcist, and I spent most of the time screaming at the TV saying, "You never do that! No, put it down." A bit like my other son, who's into medieval history. He's sort of watching a sort of sort of medieval drama, not that sword with that helmet, all that sort of stuff. So you end up screaming at the TV, and I did that with that sort of thing. As I said, I can't remember the name of the series, but it was Martin Shaw, who's quite interested in this sort of thing. With some of the paranormal stuff, I have occasionally watched Most Haunted, which is quite interesting actually, because I think, and it's just my hunch, that what they do during Most Haunted is that they somehow manage to not fake, but actually harness poltergeist activity. So, as I said, poltergeist activity is caused by somebody who is alive and present.
Yeah.
So I think what they do is that they, sort of lock somebody in a basement or whatever. They say, this place is exceedingly haunted. It's full of ghosts, wherever they had, Derek Okora, who's now fallen from grace, of course. But it's the history of the place. Lots of people have died in this place. There's been lots of hauntings. Let's put you in this place. Let's turn all the lights off. And then the tension ratchets up, and I do wonder whether they managed to find a way of sort of getting that sort of, something goes bang, something goes pop, something falls over, and whether that's actually a way of basically harnessing psychokinetic energy, or whatever you want to call it, that actually triggers your shoes moving across the room. You just get really wound up. Sorry?
I've in the past at certain shows, I've coined a phrase for them as some of them a little bit like paranormal pantomime. It's kind of, they turn up and miraculously, these things. I've done more investigations and been invited to more places than I care to think about, and very, very, very few things have ever happened. When you sit down and do a proper investigation, there's very few things that happen. But when they do happen, that adds validity to that certain thing that's gone on. But I also think probably what you try and get at is mention the placebo effect again, as that kind of like a paranormal placebo. So we kind of unwillingly allow things to happen around us, and then we respond to that as a human.
Yeah, and so if somebody locks you in a room, says it's haunted, and turns all the lights off, you're going to get worked up. Either, as I said, sort of one of the things I do wonder about is whether that's their energy, negative energy, if you like, earthing itself on something, or if something just goes pop in the room, or there's a creaky floorboard or something like that, you're going to think it's it is that you're almost conditioned to sort of look out for these things. So it sounds quite interesting, but I said most of the time I don't watch any of them because I end up screaming at the TV. The sort of ghost stories as well. I bought a Ackroyd, Peter Ackroyd, wrote a book called English Ghosts, Real Ghost Stories. And I had to give up on it because I was just diagnosing them. Just go, on this poltergeist activity, right, well then that's classic. Actually, you can see these signs through this story, this is supposed to be leisure reading, and it just sort of turned into, actually, this is just too much fun, too much like work. Might be quite interesting to give out to, trainee deliverance ministers and say, okay, right, let's look at chapter 1. What do you think is going on in this story? Actually, just what a fantastic idea. Perhaps I'll do that with the trainees next time I'm with them. But that sort of there's a huge amount of interest and huge amount of, so I'm just trying to be polite, rubbish that's written and spoken and published on the internet.
I really think, I honestly, genuinely think, and I can see it happening. I think if there's any large production companies out there that want to do a show and they want to get the real world involved again, I think somebody needs to snap you up and get you out there, like maybe as a consultancy role. But I think you're obviously very comfortable on camera. You're very easy to talk to. You, like I say, you've got great knowledge and fantastic humour. I did, like I say, a few moments where I was laughing at the book. And I predict as well, end of this year, you'll be doing that on TV, and next year, maybe it'll be I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. How about that?
Well, yeah. My wife has said, as long as you don't end up going on Strictly, because she said, we have been married for 27 years, and she said, I have never got you on the dance floor. So she said, if anyone else gets you on the dance floor, I'll kill you.
Yeah, you best Australia where the snakes are. That's best. Right. So anyway,
and then I can come back and haunt somebody, and we somebody else can deal with me. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Perfect. Is there anywhere else that you want to go with this? Are you in your ideal job? Do you love what you're doing? Do you gain great kind of self warmth and love from what you do? Is this your calling?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I've been doing this for 24 years, same age as Tommy. I was just doing it before him, so he's 24. So I've been doing this for 24. I love what I'm doing. I love being where I am, actually. I've got this 180-foot medieval playground just down those stairs over there, and just love, love this building, love being in this place. My congregation are fantastically supportive. They've been supportive and very protective over the, over the book, because I've had certainly amount of hassle from some people over it, who've been, described me as, either a charlatan or people from the more evangelical end of the Christian market have been saying, actually, you are making this all about you, and it really ought to be all about God. And I'm trying to make it about God, but I'm also me as well.
Yeah, I did not get that from reading the book. It wasn't all about you. You were very honest in the book, and I think the thing that runs through all of that is your love for your faith, and that shines in the book. So I don't think for 1 minute it's about that. So Jason Bray, we've got your father, Dr. Jason Bray.
Yeah.
Is the another stage? I wanted to ask this, like, kind of, and it's a silly question, but the position that you hold right now, you look after a certain area. Somebody looks after England, someone looks after the UK. Is there someone that looks after, is there bigger roles that go up?
Well, in the deliverance world?
Yeah.
Not really, no. So each diocese, we think of the Church of England or the Church of Wales. Yeah. Gosh, sorry. Can I just shuffle this forward so I'm not seeing the light again? Yeah, is that better? You can see the, okay, that's better. So, in a sense that there are, there might be national roles, but most of the work is actually done on a diocesan basis. So it's more the Church of England, Church in Wales, whatever, more like a federation of dioceses, and each of us are licensed by our individual bishops. It's not usually the way that we think of the church working. Be the same with the Roman Catholic Church as well. So they might have sort of national roles, but when push comes to shove, each bishop is independent, and it would be pretty much the same in the Roman Catholic, in the Anglican Church as well, where there are training roles. There's the Church of England has a lead bishop on this sort of thing, but he's the Bishop of Soda and Man, Bishop of the Isle of Man, and so that's his day job, and he just sort of this is a voluntary thing that he does. The Church in Wales has as it happens, our Archbishop is the lead bishop on this. And that's just that's just the way it is. But we're very much working on a local basis.
When you get a phone call to say, "Can you come along to my house? Things are happening."
Yeah.
What kind of feelings go through your head? Is the part of excitement? What would be for me, but then I didn't do your job. What kind of goes through your head? Are you cautious, apprehensive? What goes through your head?
Honestly, half the time I think, oh no, I've got a really busy week, and now I've got to slot this in somehow. It's somebody who lives, I'm in the Diocese of St Asaph. The Diocese of St Asaph covers a vast tract of basically the sort of top corner of northeast Wales. So we cover everything from half of Llandudno down to Newtown, and this sort of vast swathe of territory. So you get a call from somebody down at the far end of the diocese, which is an hour's drive away, and you're thinking, actually, I've got a really busy week. I really don't want to be. Really don't want to be doing this. So there is that element, and then there's, but there's also this sort of, actually, this is somebody who genuinely needs help. So how am I going to help them? So we tend to see it as a sort of helping role rather than as a, hey, I'm the guy who can come and sort out your problems. And then I get intrigued. So I start to talk about the problems, and I'm thinking, actually, yeah. Right, so that sounds like it's, and I'll have a series of questions that I, some questions I ask, but I'm sort of trying to work my way through on a sort of intellectual level before I get there. like sort of puzzle solving. And then I sort of turn up, and it's sometimes it goes the way I'm expecting it to go. Sometimes it's completely different. You sort of form a mental image of what somebody is going to look like, and then you walk into the house and they're completely different, and the circumstances aren't what you think they are. But that's life, and that's ministry. But yeah, I see it as a way of helping people more than anything else. But half the time, when the phone goes just at the moment, I'm thinking, actually, it's we're just coming up for Easter. I don't want to spend half my time on the road and then run the risk of getting lost. The last one I went to was, it should have taken me 25 minutes to get there. It took me an hour and 25 minutes because the sat nav took me the wrong way. And I ended up literally on top of a mountain somewhere.
Do you know something that's kind of that's come through while we've been talking, is that you said that when the book came out, people that even knew you pulled you to one side and felt a bit more comfortable about approaching that. And I think that's the bigger picture, about what the book's really going to do. Because I think it's going to allow people that, and I found this when I used to write for the local paper, people felt they could approach me and tell me things that they wouldn't tell a family or friends because it sounds balmy. Some of the things that they came and contacted me and asked me to go and help them with. So I think it's done a massive service for people that probably feel stuck, alienated, and a bit kind of ashamed to say, I've got this problem at my house.
Yeah, and it's been a bit strange, really, because as I said, because we're locally based, I'm licensed to the Bishop of St Asaph, so I am not, quite simply not allowed to go and operate somewhere else.
Yeah.
But people from across the country have got in touch with me, and that's gratifying in a way. They sort of, actually, we saw you on TV, and therefore we want you to help us. But I just can't travel to. There was a lady from Norfolk got in touch pretty much immediately, and sort of, can you help me? No, actually, you need to speak to the Norwich Diocesan office. This is the number you need to ring. But somebody was, I can't remember where they lived at this stage. They got back to me, they contacted me by email. I then sort of said, actually, looking for your local diocesan office, this is the number, blah, blah, blah. No, actually, we want you to help us because we saw you on TV.
Right.
It actually doesn't quite work that way. But it is, they form some sort of relationship with, with you, which is sort of actually quite gratifying in its way. But also means that
the human face is something that they probably needed to find for a long time, haven't they?
Yeah, and you get this sort of actually, somebody got in touch with me and said, I've just seen you on TV, you helped me do this. I just wanted to follow up and say, that the local vicar sorted out the problem. Yeah. Which was sort of, which is again quite nice, actually.
Anybody watching this right now, then, is that the kind of message then? If somebody does experiencing something like that, to reach out to the local church and to see if they can gain help that way?
Yeah, okay. So the first person to talk to might be your local vicar. Okay. But just at the moment, a lot of churches across the country simply aren't open. It's difficult to get hold of, hold of your local vicar, and also your local vicar might just panic. So another thing that we suggest is that you get in touch with your local diocesan office. Okay. You work out what your diocesan office is by going to your local church, and it would say the diocese of whatever. So this church would say Diocese of St Asaph. And you then sort of Google Diocese of St Asaph and give you a phone number, you ring them.
Okay.
But they're the people who can help you. They're on the ground. If you've got a problem in your house, there's no point talking to me because I can't go and do it. I'm happy to listen to people's stories, but ultimately you need somebody who can help you locally. And my shelf life runs out when I leave northeast Wales.
Okay. What a lovely way of putting it. I do think you've done a fantastic service, not just for the church, but I honestly think you've done it as well for a lot of people now that probably feel more comfortable approaching somebody of faith to come and help them out. Like I say, the book itself genuinely is, and I'll guarantee you, anybody that wants to read the book, leave a review as well on Amazon, obviously, and other places.
You don't have to. seriously.
Such a great read. I do think there's going to be bigger and better things coming from you as well. I do think there's going to be a step further forward. I think your job's probably not done in the public media regarding being that face that people can trust. I honestly think that any production company worth the salt should be snapping up right now. Obviously, I want to thank you so much for speaking to me today. I know we've had a problem getting connection and so forth, but you've been really accommodating, very warm, friendly, and I just wish you all the best for whatever you do in the future.
Right, thanks, Damien, for your time this afternoon. It's been and for putting up with technical issues like lights going off behind me. That's not podcast activity. That's just it's just motion sense and me sort of shuffling around the building. So thank you very much for your time and asking me to do this to start off with. I'm really grateful.
And hopefully we can perhaps keep in touch and maybe in the future get you back on and talk about new developments. Jason, like I say, thank you so much for your time, mate. All the best. Love to your family and everybody. And thank you once again.
Okay. Cheers, Damien. Thank you.
Bye.